Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. Here's historian Todd Earl.
Hi there, my name's Todd Earl. I am a trustee of the Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance. In today's Battlefield Moments, we're going to be sitting down with Dan Forbush from Smartacus Spatial Storytellers, and we're going to talk a little bit about the audio tour that we're in the final stages of completion with Dan's help for the Lake George Battlefield Park. What's unique with this is this endeavor has only taken us about 2.5 months, and with the help of artificial intelligence, we've created a tour that will appeal to both families and history aficionados, everybody. It's partially narrated and partially first-person recollections that are all historically accurate. So I'm going to ask Dan to talk to us a little bit about the development of Spartacus, and then how his skills and the Spartacus skills have been brought to bear on our project with the audio tour.
Great to be here, Todd. Is there a question you want to ask me to start, or is that just a wide open invitation?
Well, it's fairly wide open because I have gone, I think, from 0 to 100, well, maybe 60, in my understanding of AI in this project, and I have been more than amazed with the materials, both in volume and in accuracy, that you've been able to produce in very short periods of time. So maybe you can give us a little bit of insight before we talk about the tour specifically, about how you've come to use AI to do storytelling.
Yeah, it really is quite amazing. I started my career on a manual typewriter about 50 years ago, and here we are, talking about writing with artificial intelligence in an environment that is that allows for GPS-triggered storytelling. As you're walking around, it will tell stories. So in a way, it's an entirely new kind of book that we can listen to as we walk around, which is quite remarkable, and I think it makes the stories come alive in a way that a book really can't, because you're right there. You can imagine the scene as it actually happened. Whatever.
In some ways, you're kind of reliving that history.
Yeah.
First person.
So it was about just over 3 years ago that ChatGPT came out and just amazed the world with its abilities. At that time, I certainly wasn't expecting AI to have anywhere near the power that it does. I remember seeing a forecast not long ago that said, well, then maybe by 2030, AI will achieve the same ability to write, as a professional writer, write as well as a professional. And I would say it's here right now. I think it does write as well, certainly much faster than any human writer can write. And it organizes material much more quickly than any human can. I mean, it is essentially superhuman. It gives us a superhuman ability to organize material and express it. And so It's been great fun working with Warren County. We've created several audio tours since we started collaborating with the planning department. Our first audio tour we produced, I'd say 4 years ago. That was with, I would call it manual tools. And it was fairly arduous to do that, to write these narratives, to get an understanding of all these historic places, and to actually master the material in such a way that, I could write it in a 2 or 3 minute segment. Now, with AI, we can upload all of the sources as we did. We uploaded all of the signage, all of the interpretive signs in the visitor center, plus a number of YouTube videos, just about all the material that we could capture. We uploaded it into Google's tool, Gemini Notebooks, and that essentially created think of it as kind of a mini brain that knows essentially most of what Russ Bellico knows about that battlefield, and what we're telling the public, in such a way now that you can extract that information in any form that you want. And so we call this our knowledge refinery. And from this refinery, we can generate narratives, text narratives that will go onto the phone that you can read as you go from point to point on the battlefield. At the same time, we'll be generating an audio narrative with a narrator and a historic character, talking about that particular point of interest. So it's going to be a much different experience than people have right now.
It's fascinating. And I know I can admit that when this first started to unfold, I had a modicum of question about AI. I think it can be used for bad things. It can be used for amazingly good things. But I have to say that throughout doing this process, we've had 4 of the trustees intimately involved. As you mentioned, Russ Bellico was our proofreader of sorts, our source person, and folks may recognize that name. He's written the major books on the military history of Lake George and Lake Champlain. And other than a few minor, not even really factual things, but just procedural things, he was amazed by it as well. Yeah. So the accuracy is uncanny at how well it did.
Yeah. And of course, we prompt it. We tell it what we want it to write. It came up with the term like a national park narrative, the voice of a national park media piece, a publication. That's the style that it figured out itself that it should adopt. And so because it has been trained on so much material, essentially all the material that's on the web, it knows what a national park narrative sounds like. Yeah. And so it could take our material and customize it, in that voice for us, in that tone. And so, it sounded good. It met our expectations of what that should sound like, because that's what it is so good at, mimicking and predicting what it is that we're looking for. That's really what these large language models
and it predict. Truly does have a very professional sound to it. Our ultimate result, or what we're calling our beta version, because I think we'll probably have additions or minor changes going forward over time as we maybe add some other stops. So right now we have 12 stops in the park. You will be directed from the visitor center, from there to the first stop and so forth. The narrator will guide you in between stops and kind of prep you for the next stop. And then many of the stops have a character voice, all that have been artificial intelligence generated. But as I spoke earlier, they will be speaking information that comes directly from journals, from letters, from first-person sources. None of it is contrived. It's all accurate about that stop. So not only will you learn about that stop, but you'll kind of get a chance to be there a little bit as well. And so I think our hope is, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's going to be attractive to the real history nerd, but it's also going to be family friendly. I think kids can enjoy this and get something out of it. And the nice thing about it is we will have a QR code on the door of the visitor center, and you can download the app. It'll be encompassed in Warren County's Stories from Open Space app, along with Dan, a walking tour of Lake Luzerne, a tour of Thurman is on that app, a tour of North Creek is on that app, and now you'll see in a few weeks a audio tour of Lake George Battlefield Park. And you'll be able to download that and then begin. So it's not going to be restrained by the VIC being open or somebody being there to tell you how to do it. It's all going to be easily accessible.
Yep. Yeah.
So we're excited about that.
Yeah, we are too.
We have a snippet. So to give you a little teaser of this audio tour, one of the stops will be the Henry Knox Monument in the park, commemorating the Knox Noble Train of Artillery. So we're going to play about a 3-minute clip of what you would hear on the audio tour at that stop.
Father Jogues never imagined that more than a century later, these waters would carry artillery that helped change the course of the American Revolution. As you leave this monument, keep the lake in view. The water before you was not scenery, it was a highway. For indigenous travelers, this was a route of movement, trade, and connection. For French and British armies, it became a military corridor. And in the winter of 1775, for a young Boston bookseller named Henry Knox, it became the first great test of an almost impossible mission. As we walk toward the Henry Knox Memorial, imagine the lake in December, the chill of winter, and the shoreline crowded with men, boats, oxen, sleds, ropes, and cannon. Knox has reached this southern landing just before ice closes the water. Behind him lie Fort Ticonderoga and Crown Point. Ahead lies the long road to Boston. He had needed open water to bring the guns down Lake George before freeze-up. On December 17th, he reports the following to George Washington, General and Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army.
I returned from Ticonderoga to this place on the 15th and brought with me the cannon. It is not easy to conceive the difficulties we have had in getting them over the lake, owing to the advanced season of the year and contrary winds. 3 days ago, it was very uncertain whether we could have gotten them over until next spring, but now, please God, they shall go.
Knox spent 2 weeks here at the southern end of Lake George organizing the next stage of the expedition. He gathered oxen, horses, sleds, wagons, chains, ropes, food, and men skilled enough to move a cargo almost no one believed could be moved. Now he needs frozen ground and snow deep enough for sleds. Too little snow and the guns would not move. Too much and the teams would fail.
I have sent for the sleds and teams and expect to begin moving them to Saratoga on Wednesday or Thursday next, trusting that between this and that period we shall have a fine fall of snow, which will enable us to proceed further and make the carriage easy. If that should be the case, I hope in 16 or 17 days to be able to present to your excellency a noble train of artillery.
From this point, the expedition entered the military road toward the Hudson Valley. The journey would become known as the Noble Train of Artillery, the entire route of which 59 markers commemorate today. This is one of them. Knox reached Boston by late January 1776. In March, Washington placed the guns on Dorchester Heights overlooking the British fleet and city. Faced with artillery they could not ignore, the British evacuated Boston without a major battle. Let the scale of that achievement settle in. The marker lies ahead to your left, adjacent to what was the military road to Fort Edward. If you prefer not to walk down to it, you can view its plaque in the description on your phone. Our next stop is the Battle of Lake George Monument, just ahead.
I hope you'll find that as fascinating as I do. I just think it's inspiring. It's neat to have accurate history presented in a way that is entertaining in a good way. And it's just amazing how that turned out.
Yeah, the narrator, if you listen closely, actually is taking a breath. You know, they actually are simulating the sound of a speaker taking a breath, which is how that's why it sounds so realistic.
Yeah, and I just would remind people that's entirely generated by artificial intelligence.
Yeah, written too.
Yeah,
written and voiced by AI.
Yeah,
with editing, of course. You know, we reviewed it. We don't just go with it.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of criticism of AI and the term AI slop. You hear a lot about that. I think it's just important to emphasize that AI doesn't have to produce slop. It can actually produce some very compelling material as long as you use it carefully. You're basing it in expert knowledge. I think it can be a very powerful educational tool.
Huh. And I'm thinking back when we first met Dan and John Denuzzo and Marky Mannix and Peter Werdeman and I were kind of the subcommittee of the Board of Trustees that kind of formed this little endeavor. Dan came up with copious amounts of information. I mean, overwhelming amounts of information. So we've really spent most of the last 2 months continually distilling that and kind of tweaking that and modifying that into a manageable length program that fits in between the stops. We walked the battlefield park and decided what stops would be best. And you've worked some pretty miraculous ways with this information.
Yeah, and in addition to the audio, we'll have on the phone, we'll have photos and maps and so forth. So there will be supplemental materials
in the text.
In the text. Right.
Well, Dan, thank you for joining us today. And folks, we plan to have this released right around the anniversary of the Battle of Lake George on September 8th. And we will get information out to the membership about accessing that. At any point, you can access and download the app for Stories from Open Space, Warren County, and look at the Luzerne apps or any of the other apps. And then before long, you'll see our app there as well.
Right. So storiesfromopenspace.org is the website where you'll find the link to download the app. So thank you.
Thanks for being a part of our history.
Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. For more information or to check out the latest podcast, go to lakegeorgebattlefield.org and listen live on Saturday mornings to Lake George Battlefield Moments on 93.5 Lake FM.